Story 1. Sticking to things a president can legally do. Declassify and order the release of all the Epstein evidence, with only the victims' names and faces redacted. Nothing else should be edited out. With lower priority, do the same with Area 51 and all the alien research results. Story 2. One day is not enough time to legally make the United States a better place. That requires buy-in from Congress. Any executive order I could imagine would just be reversed when the real president returns the next day. Maybe release the Epstein files. Other than that, I could either have fun flying Air Force One to some neat golf course or work on a speech that would get more attention than my normal Reddit comment. Say some things that politicians won't say, like, the spiraling national debt will end in an epic economic collapse. It spirals because the voters do not want to deal with the truth, and the politicians, who are supposed to be wiser than ordinary voters, are too cowardly to tell them. We need a government by grown-ups for grown-ups. Story 3. Make all future executive orders temporary for 7 days. If Congress has not approved them by the end of the 7th day, they become null and void and cannot be made again, not even in a modified version, until Congress lifts the ban on the subject of the executive order. Story 4. Resign immediately with full benefits and hope that my vice president is far more competent than I am. Story 5. Assuming I could pass any legislation that day without needing votes from Congress, I would enforce term limits for Congress with no exceptions. If you have served for more than 4 years, you are immediately removed from the position. Story 6. Immediate executive order directing all federal agencies to enact emergency response guidelines to lower siren noises by 10 to 15 decibels across the board. Sirens should not exceed 110 decibels. Executive order directing the Federal Communications Commission to enforce net neutrality principles that already exist in its charter, and to raise the minimum broadband speed to symmetrical 100 megabits per second download and upload. Direct the Department of Justice to investigate broadband companies' misuse of fiber grants and compel them to invest in fiber rollout. Prohibit local municipalities from banning local fiber network build-outs. Direct the Internal Revenue Service to release free file code immediately and open source it. Direct the Drug Enforcement Administration to deschedule marijuana in line with the existing review recommendation. Declassify documents relating to Epstein, Roswell, the John F. Kennedy assassination, and other public interest subjects that do not endanger existing intelligence assets or create international crises. Reaffirm defense commitments to Ukraine, Japan, the Philippines, and South Korea. Story 7. Probably try to get laid. One day is not even enough to get to know the staff or who to ask to do what. The working day is over before you even get started on writing anything solid down. Story 8. Release the Epstein files. I would not even ask for permission. I would get my access, dump the files on the internet, and then clock out. Story 9. Make it so disabled people can actually survive on disability. They should not have an income limit for their bank accounts and should not have to worry about repercussions, such as their benefits being reduced or lost, including associated benefits like healthcare, if they want to work while receiving disability or if they choose to get married. Story 10. I would start by reversing the reversal of Roe versus Wade and restoring women's rights to their healthcare choices. Then I would do my best to improve healthcare for the people. Story 11. Do things that actually help Americans, not the fearmongering that is being done today. Story 12. Create an executive order that returns some of the power of the president to Congress and the Supreme Court. They may not be perfect, but people tend to make better choices as a group rather than individually. Story 13. If I could do whatever I wanted, I would declare Make America Great Again and everyone involved in the writing of Project 2025 traitors and have them dealt with accordingly, either by life imprisonment in a special wing of ADX Florence or simply abandoning them in the middle of the Nevada desert with no supplies. I would slash the military budget in half and reallocate those funds to fixing our infrastructure and providing aid to the impoverished. I would also request a few supercomputers to mine Bitcoin for about 5 to 6 hours and have all the generated cryptocurrency transferred to a wallet in my possession, which I would then exchange for Monero. Story 14. In order to ensure the security and continuing stability, the Republic will be reorganized. Story 15. Restore funding permanently for the Corporation for Public Broadcasting, protect our public lands and national parks, and fully fund public education nationwide. Story 16. Outside of rescinding a significant number of executive orders, my top 5. 1. Abolish the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, Firearms and Explosives and the Drug Enforcement Administration and merge their operations into the Federal Bureau of Investigation, while removing many Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, Firearms and Explosives rules and Drug Enforcement Administration investigations into cannabis related to the sale of a pound. 2. Order all federal law enforcement agencies to not investigate cases related to cannabis. 3. Compel the Attorney General to begin prosecutions related to the Epstein scandal and have the files released after the grand jury. 4. End relations with a number of countries, Russia, Israel, Saudi Arabia, Germany, Turkey, and others. 5. Begin preparations to bring all United States troops back to the United States, except for a few overseas bases in Syrian Kurdistan, Kosovo, Japan, and one believed to remain in Germany. Story 17. Declassify everything over 10 years old that is not instructions for making weapons. Secrecy is deeply incompatible with meaningful democracy. Story 18. Undo all actions taken by Donald Trump. Release the files related to Jeffrey Epstein while protecting victims and fully exposing Epstein's associates and clients. Investigate victims' reports and hold accountable everyone involved in the cover-up. Story 19. Undo everything that Trump has done and completely restore the White House to its original state. Remove all the gaudy gold tapestry he has placed everywhere, including in the nooks and crannies. Also, remove the concrete patio. Story 20. Wire transfer a couple million into my bank account, then relax and watch some anime for the rest of the day. Story 21. Release all information on Epstein and any documents on every member of Congress. They all probably have skeletons. Story 22. People seriously overestimate the power of the president, especially what a president can do in one day. I, for one, would commute all federal death sentences to life in prison without parole and then take a joyride on Air Force One, since any executive order I issue would be pointless and repealed the next day. Story 23. There is very little a person can do in only one day as president. Therefore, I will officially recognize Taiwan and order an increased military presence in the region. I might even recognize Hong Kong as an independent country as well. Story 24. Some declassifications or other uninteresting matters probably. Any executive orders could be undone the next day, and most problems facing everyday Americans are caused by congressional action or inaction. Story 25. Ban lobbying, cancel Citizens United, implement universal health care, provide free college education, require billionaires to pay their actual taxes, ban corporate ownership of homes and rentals, establish a mandatory 4-day workweek to help end homelessness and unemployment, and set mandatory age limits for all public offices. Story 26. I would probably enrich myself and my friends at the expense of the people I represent. Part of the problem is that it is human nature. We have a biological need to gather resources as close to us as we can, even when we have plenty. The most incorruptible presidents were also the least memorable. Jimmy Carter and Calvin Coolidge come to mind. Story 27. I would do everything in my power to put an end to all forms of lobbying and place term limits on Congress and representatives. I think these two changes would be massive wins for this country, and I know the president cannot just do these things. But I want the conversation to be loud. Story 28. There is not much one can do in a single day as the leader of a country, especially with only the powers of a president. The question is, did I get to choose my vice president, and what happens after the day ends? If I can pick a vice president, I would resign and let that person become president. However, if the new vice president I chose would not remain president after tomorrow, that would not accomplish much. Looking into it, I can issue pardons. Although I cannot replace officials without the advice and consent of a Congress that is not currently in session, I could fire all of the previous administration's cabinet members to slow down their influence. With that knowledge, my aim would be to fire every high-level cabinet position, including the heads of the Federal Bureau of Investigation, Immigration and Customs Enforcement, Department of Justice, and any federal agencies with loyal appointees from the previous administration. I would drop the federal charges against Kilmar Abrego Garcia, withdraw the National Guard from Washington, D.C., and pardon as many nonviolent drug offenders as possible. This would not stop the former administration from causing more chaos if they retook power, but it would at least slow them down. They would have to reconfirm all appointees through Congress after several members have seen what these people are willing to do despite the Constitution and the rule of law. Even if every appointee were reconfirmed, it would take more time to complete those hearings, delaying the reconsolidation of power by several months. This assumes I am acting within my legal powers as president. Since I would only be president for a day, I would not want to set a precedent of breaking the law, even if there are certain actions I would strongly desire to take otherwise. Story 29. If I become the current one, should I shoot myself? If I become the next president as myself, it would basically be New Deal 2.0. Story 30. Resign or reject the offer. I am not American, and I do not like the United States in general, even without this whole Trump situation. Story 31. Change election laws to end the two-party system. Require television networks to give equal airtime to all presidential candidates. Open debates to anyone running for president and impose a cap on the maximum amount of funding that can be raised. Story 32. Give yourselves term limits. Make psychiatric evaluation tests mandatory for holding office in the United States, as well as selling any and all stock you might own, and either a political science or history degree. You must also meet all the prerequisites for joining any of our government agencies. Then I will get rid of the scorpions. Story 33. Put together a nonpartisan commission voted on by the Senate and Congress to redistrict voting districts to reflect the population rather than the party they represent. Removing this right from the states. Increase the budget for the Internal Revenue Service and hire more agents. Make all department heads serve 10-year terms, with Congress given the power to fill vacancies. Appoint 30 highly partisan Supreme Court justices to expose the office's illegitimacy. After court packing, transfer all Supreme Court nominations to the Senate and impose 20-year term limits on judges. Legalize cannabis federally. Restore net neutrality and rural broadband initiatives. Restore renewable energy programs. Remove tariffs and give the power to regulate tariffs exclusively to Congress. Institute ranked choice voting at all levels of federal elections. Finally, significantly reduce the president's powers, making the position largely symbolic. Story 34. Change the law so I can be king forever. Build more big beautiful walls. Put 200% tariffs on everyone. Make my own meme coin the official currency. Fire everyone who does not agree with me and auction off their jobs. Story 35. I would spray my face with purple skin toner. Make strange comments about not wanting to date boys who look like my son while simultaneously promising my son that I would never date any boys older than him. Then I would sign many executive orders forcing people to be gay and enforce that women could only compete against men who identified as women. I would rename the American Lake in Washington to Canada Lake and American River in California to Mexico River. I would replace the Diet Coke button with regular Pepsi. I would compliment Mexico and Canada on what beautiful countries they are and tell their citizens that I enjoy having them as neighbors. I would tell Denmark that they are doing a great job with Greenland. I would tell Panama thank you for letting us use your canal until 2000 as per our agreement when you enlisted our help building it in your country. I would release the Epstein list and direct the Federal Bureau of Investigation to immediately arrest those suspected of committing horrible acts. Story 36. One 24-hour day would not be enough, so I better get a detailed list started to do as much as possible. Story 37. Since insider trading would be legal for me, I would buy a bunch of put options in a public company. Then I would announce that I am nationalizing them. When the stock dropped, I would sell my put options for a large gain and announce just kidding. Story 38. Anyone who says anything other than find out about the extraterrestrials is lying. I would spend the entire day poring over everything our government knows about possible extraterrestrial life. More than a day, I would do useful things, but for one day only, tell me about the extraterrestrials. Story 39. Any and all religious-based laws would be removed. Tax exemptions for churches would be eliminated. Release Epstein's list. Decriminalize most, if not all, drugs. Story 40. Do I get to choose the day when it happens? Then forget it, I bring a weapon to the meeting with Vladimir Putin and take him out. Story 41. Figure out how I can give myself millions of dollars in a single day. So once the day is over and I am no longer president, at least I am rich. Story 42. Declare a constitutional crisis and call for a continental Congress. We have utterly nullified any redeeming value of our cornerstone legal document, mangled by 250 years of undue Supreme Court of the United States superiority and expanded executive power well beyond reasonable necessity. We have granted municipal employees the ability to commit constitutional violations on a whim and allowed them to carry out summary executions with impunity. We have allowed our government to become a mouthpiece for megacorporations and totalitarians. The office of the president has been irredeemably damaged, its legitimacy drained, and its purpose lost. Congress has failed its responsibility to its people. It is time to redefine the social contract to preserve any semblance of being a nation interested in justice and liberty. Story 43. Recognize Taiwan as an independent country. Invite them to change their constitution to become the Republic of Taiwan. Raise tariffs on any country that does not do the same. Issue an executive order allowing Taiwan to compete as Taiwan in the 2028 Olympics instead of Chinese Taipei. Also, try to include Taiwan in the United Nations. Story 44. Redo that ancient constitution and make it modern, borrowing from other nations for what to include. It would have to be based on the population automatically knowing about the change. Story 45. 2 executive orders. The first one cancels every temporary unauthorized measure executive order. The second requires Congress to remain in session at least 250 days. It would require Congress to put all their stock, exchange-traded funds, or other investments into a blind trust for their entire time in office. They can withdraw any amount for living and working expenses. Finally, they and the rest of the executive branch would receive the benefits that a typical general schedule employee would get. Story 46. Dissolve the union. The entire project has failed. Start over with states that actually share the same reality coming together. Or not, as the case may be. Story 47. I would spend the entire day signing executive orders to fix as many simple but impactful issues as possible, such as eliminating junk fees, making Election Day a national holiday, and ensuring animal shelters nationwide have the funding they need. Then I would host a large, free community dinner on the White House lawn to meet the people I am serving. Story 48. Put a bullet in my brain after I wrote numerous executive orders revoking every single change Donald Trump has made. Story 49. I'm Trump. I'd find some way, by legal or illegal means, to fire Vance. Perhaps just tell him to resign, and I'll make him a Supreme Court of the United States Justice, a job for life. Then I'd appoint Gavin Newsom as vice president. Then resign. Story 50. A day is not enough time. Give me 4 years, and I would do my very best to set the country on the right track. I am politically centrist, so I would never get elected. Socially liberal, fiscally conservative people do not seem to be very popular these days. Story 51. Signs an executive order that bans holidays, and from now on we will never change the date. I remain president forever. Story 52. Release the Epstein files. Seat every lawyer working for the American Civil Liberties Union and the Innocence Project on the Supreme Court. That is about 200 of the smartest, most human rights-oriented, least corrupt and greedy legal minds in the United States. Designate the Heritage Foundation a terrorist organization. Immediately cut all ties with Israel and cooperate with the International Criminal Court to bring Netanyahu to justice for his war crimes. Announce a bounty program. Any citizen that can deliver proof of an individual or corporation with a net worth over $10 million cheating on taxes receives a 10% cut of all funds the Internal Revenue Service recovers. Issue orders to close and demolish every private prison with which the federal government has contracts. Issue an order that grants citizenship to all deferred action for childhood arrivals recipients, as well as anyone who has been living and working in the United States, has no violent crimes on their record, and wants citizenship. Close immigration and customs enforcement completely and redirect all funding to the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau. Forgive every cent of federal student loan debt. Fully fund scientific research again, specifically clean energy and messenger RNA technology. Story 53. Rescind multiple executive orders, release the Jeffrey Epstein list, and end the bombing in Gaza as soon as possible by cutting Israel off. Story 54. Authorize the transfer of as much aid as I can to Ukraine, as much as I can without congressional approval. Story 55. Epstein files pardon some innocents, commit a crime so heinous the Supreme Court would have to revisit the presidential immunity ruling. Story 56. Abolish the Electoral College. Make gerrymandering illegal. Make ranked choice voting the standard. Make all guns illegal except handguns, and have state-run shooting ranges where you can fire any gun you want. You just pay for ammunition. Story 57. Sign an executive order undoing everything former President Donald Trump has done. Get Donald Trump back in court so he can finish his criminal cases. Story 58. Undo the pedophiles' mess and do everything in my power to ensure that I and any future president have no control over tariffs. Also, I would come up with a way to make it illegal to flood the zone. I have no idea how I would do that, but that is the idea. I would try to eliminate the presidential pardon power because it is too much power. I also believe the Supreme Court should be completely bipartisan so there is never a Republican or Democratic majority. Ideally, there should be no associated party for judges. I would like to address hate speech in political campaigns. I would work to get money out of politics by limiting donations and prohibiting any business or stock market ventures for anyone in government. I would begin with these reforms as I believe they could be implemented quickly. The remedy tour with our allies will take a while. Story 59. Do good things quietly so the rest of the world does not have to hear about my latest foolish action or see my face all day, every day. Seriously, please choose someone competent but unremarkable next time. Story 60. Do everything in my power to get money out of politics, enforce ethics on the Supreme Court, end gerrymandering, and limit my own presidential power so that corruption will no longer flourish within the White House. Story 61. Arrest Donald John Trump and all of his associates. Reverse all his pardons. Try to undo all the damage he has caused. It will take much more than one day for the final part. It is easier to break things than to fix them. Story 62. Over $100,000. Taxes at 95%. Lifetime subscription for any individual or business. Prices of items can only be $3 more than the cost to make. Price tags include state taxes. Medicaid is the only insurance, and you are automatically enrolled if you work. The same applies to Social Security and Medicare. 55 is the age of retirement with no exceptions. AutoPen will not work hard that day. 55 is the age of retirement with no exceptions. Any loan is paid off in 3 years. A house in 10. Start maintaining national infrastructure. The wealthy can keep their money but cannot own more than 2 acres and 2 homes anywhere in the United States. Internal Revenue Service appointments for taxes and H&R Block and the rest now work there. No fees for that. Collection companies have 1 year to try to collect money. If not, a 10% tax write-off applies to the whole amount. A person already paying taxes will be charged a $25 paper and mail fee. Public and private schools are now the same. Education is free, and military service is mandatory for 4 years. Once out of the military, training for being in society continues with no gaps. Food is never thrown away. Any leftovers at the end of the night must be given out. 2 weeks before the expiration date, food goes to food banks. Update the United States Postal Service. All ratified and law forever. No going back. No using money to use courts to implement personal agendas. Politicians must denounce all affiliation with any religion. The cap on how much anyone can make is $100,000 a year and can only hold $40 million in total assets. All new wealth goes back to the business or the community for infrastructure improvements. Businesses have a shelf life of 30 years and cannot be passed on. Land can be bought, but only 5 acres per person. so you can build your own house 1 2x4 at a time if needed. Story 63. Gather anyone who pledges allegiance to Donald Trump, fire them, and deny all their retirement and benefits. Then gather all Make America Great Again Republicans and imprison them in Guantanamo Bay shortly after designating Make America Great Again as a terrorist organization. Story 64. Executive action. Any active politician with credible information of illegal activity impacting United States citizens is to be placed in an undisclosed location until further notice. Story 65. I would do nothing. I was not elected. I do not believe in dictatorship. No one voted for me, so for me to do anything would be very wrong. I may dislike what Donald Trump is doing, and I may dislike the system used, but he was elected, and the system is based on democracy. Any action I take would go against democracy. Story 66. We are bringing back the stocks and putting dishonest politicians in them. Tomatoes will not be provided, but you are welcome to bring your own for throwing. Story 67. I cannot say the exact details, but it involves some Romanian techniques and some long stakes, about 10 feet tall and pointed. Story 68. Separation of church and state is replaced with church has no authority over state. In other words, the reverse no longer holds. The state absolutely can restrict or even shut down churches. I do this as an official act, meaning any rules about whether I can or cannot do this do not apply as per the Supreme Court's recent decision. If I get to do two things, a total embargo on Israel, Russia, and Belarus is my second act. This embargo means that citizens of these countries cannot enter the country, nor can there be any kind of economic activity. Story 69. I guess I could do anything I pleased, since now the Supreme Court of the United States has given complete immunity to the President of the United States. Maybe I would confiscate all the billionaires' money and set up universal health care, for starters. Then I would increase the top tax rate for the rich to about 75%. Story 70. Place a hit on all Make America Great Again conspirators, including the Supreme Court of the United States. Thanks to their immunity ruling, I would be weak within my rights. Story 71. 1. Release the Epstein files. 2. Recognize the State of Palestine. 3. Acknowledge that Benjamin Netanyahu is responsible for war crimes. 4. Ban stock trading for all active members of Parliament and Congress. 5. Repeal all the harmful policies implemented by Donald Trump. 6. Anyone who attempts to undermine the Constitution will be punished to the full extent of the law. 7. Prosecute Donald Trump for child sexual abuse and multiple attempts to overthrow the government. 8. Prohibit donations from corporations. 9. Prohibit foreign entities from purchasing land in the country. 10. Prohibit foreign entities from donating to politicians. 11. Reform the Supreme Court. There is a lot to do, but I only have 24 hours. Story 72. Take Air Force One to the compound where they all seem to relax. Then fly back to the White House for the evening. Sleep in the White House. Sit at the big desk and etch my name in it with a knife. Use Abraham Lincoln's toilet. Order an amazing steak from the kitchen. Let my kids run rampant through the White House. Have private time in the White House bedroom. All the presidential activities? There is really nothing you can do in a day. Story 73. Make animal cruelty a crime. Just because you get a meal from cruelty does not mean it is not cruelty or necessary. Many people benefit from unethical things. Just because there is a benefit does not mean it is justifiable to exploit and harm others. Slavery used to be very beneficial, and now it is a crime. Most people will say I am comparing steaks to slavery. The second thing I would do as president is to make critical thinking a requirement for all students and for all jobs. An example is not a comparison. Story 74. Oh wait, I would file a tax return claiming zero income for the year and then pardon myself for tax evasion. Story 75. Epstein list. Send a few members of the current administration to prison to ensure this misconduct never happens again. Implement some form of free college and free healthcare. Most importantly, all new music recordings must have consistent volume levels. I am tired of some songs being inherently louder than others on my playlists. I would also take steps to adjust older music to match the volume standards of newer music as closely as possible. No more quietly recorded songs. Story 76. Institute a system to transition the United States of America to the metric system. Submit right to repair laws nationally. Clean up the finance of the Food and Drug Administration. Ensure fines for the Environmental Protection Agency reflect the cost of cleanup. Submit modifications to the Jones Act. Story 77. Set an age limit for the presidency and conduct annual mental health evaluations. Implement political education campaigns to encourage voters to avoid candidates with criminal charges, elderly individuals with cognitive decline, and unsuccessful businesspeople. Promote informed voting, especially during election periods. Story 78. Official full and unconditional pardon of nonviolent marijuana convictions. Give a speech. Bowl a game in the White House bowling alley. Official tour of the Pentagon. Decide if anything in Area 51 is worth declassification. Meeting with 25 senators and 100 representatives, bipartisan, to draft a bill for immediate passage diverting 40% of the Immigration and Customs Enforcement budget to the Department of Veterans Affairs. Story 79. Being president for one day would be a waste of time. Constitutionally, the president cannot do anything significant in one day, and executive orders can be rescinded by the next president. Story 80. Enact laws that require more parental responsibility and accountability, including a provision that parents cannot receive government assistance unless they have completed courses in parenting, life skills, economics, and possibly nutrition and self-care. Story 81. Fly to Area 51. Or check out that warehouse where we keep the Ark of the Covenant from that archaeology documentary with Harrison Ford. Story 82. Fly to Area 51. Or visit the warehouse where we keep the Ark of the Covenant from the archaeology documentary featuring Harrison Ford. Story 83. I would give more rights to animals. I want an indicator on identification cards that states would check your residence for pets. No more kill shelters, period. I would militarily threaten manufacturers and large pharmaceutical companies to lower costs. I would ban all capturing and hunting of at-risk species. All amusement parks must switch to rehabilitation methods instead of shows. Story 84. Prohibit solar panel installations except over car parks, roofs, and canals, as well as wind turbines. Activate nuclear power plants and coal plants. Eliminate the healthcare system and health insurance programs, including the Affordable Care Act. Provide no subsidies for any of these. Implement Warren Buffett's plan for re-election rules for sitting senators and representatives. If the deficit increases, the official is removed. Apply term limits to both the House of Representatives and the Senate. Prevent members from participating in stock market trading. Increase oil drilling and complete the pipeline. Remove current emissions and fuel economy regulations. Consumers will purchase what they can afford. Although opposed to big government, require a law that new cars must include a 5-year bumper-to-bumper and 100,000-mile warranty to reduce waste, as vehicles are currently nearly disposable. Story 85. I do not want to be president because there is no real power. I want to be the emperor. One glance for me and heads roll. Story 86. Reverse every executive order. Release the Epstein files. Roll back all tariffs. Remove all the gold that was added to the White House. Demolish the patio and restore all the flowers in the Rose Garden. Fire all the new immigration and customs enforcement officers. Story 87. Remove Trump and his cronies from power. We will have fewer problems in the White House because of this. Story 88. The president cannot be held accountable for any crimes they commit. I would round up all the Make America Great Again supporters, like all of them, anyone who even so much as tweeted support for him. Send them all to an island and completely destroy it. Eradicate the problem that is harming the United States. Then make it illegal, punishable by death, to display anything related to Adolf Hitler, or to show any kind of support or agreement with anything he did. Story 89. If I were president for a day, first I would declare all Mondays optional because of self-care. Then, I would mandate unlimited snack breaks at work. Finally, I would secretly replace all political debates with dance-offs for democracy, but make it fun. Story 90. Provide my family with $10 million. Implement limits on the time in office for all elected officials. Make lobbying illegal. Remove the ban on suing pharmaceutical companies over vaccine injuries. Release Epstein files. I understand a president cannot do most of these things. Story 91. Make it an entirely non-official, photo ops only position permanently. My one and only act would be a presidential proclamation or executive order to end all proclamations and void any official presidential acts, as a president is not a monarch and should not behave as one. Since it would just be reversed the next day, it is probably better to do something like release information on lobbyists, lots and lots of information, as much dirt as possible. Story 92. Commute the sentences of all federal death row inmates to life in prison. Commute the sentences of all nonviolent drug offenders currently imprisoned. Release all nonviolent immigrants currently incarcerated for immigration-related crimes. Send weapons and military equipment to Ukraine, with full permission to use them as they see fit against Russia. Use eminent domain to seize all Donald Trump properties. Declare some of them Native American reservations. Declare others immigration amnesty zones. Lastly, declassify all government documents. Story 93. That depends. Can I come back to my regular body? If I can, the entire cabinet gets fired, the Epstein files are released unredacted, and I call a State of the Union, then end my life on live television. Story 94. Issue an executive order that nullifies all recently written executive orders. Reassign all cabinet and department heads to a 3.5-year fact-finding mission in the Russian oil fields in Siberia, allowing them to share all the funds saved, since their mission will eliminate the need for those resources if completed. Story 95. Since it is acceptable to arrest terrorists without due process, 5 Supreme Court justices, approximately half of Congress, every current political appointee, and several media supporters of the Make America Great Again movement would suddenly go missing. It would not be surprising if they all experienced acute lead poisoning during a poorly planned escape attempt. An executive order should then be written declaring the Republican Party a terrorist organization, along with another order reversing all actions taken by the current administration. Story 96. Demagnetization, then universal health care and education, reinvest in clean energy, divest from fossil fuels, tax corporations, and restore net neutrality. Story 97. Call a press conference. America currently is, and always has been, a civil oligarchy. Your vote does not matter. You are not free. This country has never been the best. It has only done so well because of World War II and geographical location that kept us safe. We have had a slave workforce of various extremes that has kept us propped up. You are all too weak, divided, and uninformed to actually fight against it. Most of you cannot even fathom what affordable housing truly is. You support the wealthy elite because you are too complacent to reject social hierarchy. The Democratic Party will not help you. The Republican Party will not help you. Independents, even if they had any power, which they never will because Americans are unwilling to handle a third option, will not help you. There is no hope. This country will eventually fall. I am surprised it hasn't happened already. Good luck. I am out. Story 98. I would set up a trial by combat for all billionaires. The one who survives ends poverty. Fun fact. They could opt out of the battle and save their comrades by doing the right thing. Story 99. 1. Reschedule most drugs and pardon everyone incarcerated for marijuana offenses. 2. Eliminate immigration and customs enforcement. 3. Condemn Israel. Impose sanctions at the United Nations. Arrest Prime Minister Netanyahu, and deploy a large peacekeeping force to Gaza with substantial humanitarian aid. 4. Release the Epstein files without redactions. 5. Cancel as much debt as possible through executive order. 6. Direct the Central Intelligence Agency and Federal Bureau of Investigation to apprehend as many fascists and fascist sympathizers as possible within 24 hours. 7. Deliver a primetime speech informing the working class of America that their enemies are billionaires and the members of Congress they have influenced, both Republican and Democrat. 8. Melt all the gold accents installed by former President Trump in the White House and pour it over his head. 9. Leave the Oval Office, defecating on the floor as a final act. Story 100. Release everything we do or do not have on unidentified flying objects, reschedule cannabis, and then dismantle the Federal Reserve. Story 101. Step 1. Declare myself dictator. It is going to take longer than 24 hours to fix this situation. Step 2. Universal health care. Story 102. I cannot say because much of it is against Reddit's terms of service. Let's just say there would be far fewer billionaires. Story 103. Actually have the courage to make America great again. Not make America make me great again like the spineless president is doing. I can call him spineless for voting for him the first time. Story 104. Declassify everything that is not pertinent to current operations we are involved in. I would reveal all the hidden information on everyone. Democrats, Republicans, Vladimir Putin, Benjamin Netanyahu. Story 105. A day? Extremely little matters. Anything I try to legislate or execute by executive order will just be undone tomorrow. I could demand the complete and unredacted Epstein files, but invested parties will delay long enough that it won't matter. I could try to apologize to foreign entities for the abuse they've endured at our hands recently, but there is not enough time to rebuild any relationships. Possibly, the only thing I might be able to make happen is support for Ukraine against Russia. However, I do not know enough about military logistics to know if that can be done. I could order student loan debts to be wiped clean, with encouragement to rewrite loan policies. But again, a judge will put a pause on that, and nothing will happen in 24 hours. So I do not know. I will just get drunk and go fishing on taxpayer money and see if I can influence the markets through insider knowledge. I cannot help anyone else in one day, despite my genuine desire to do so, so I might as well try to take care of myself. Story 106. I would deploy the National Guard and remove everyone with a tattoo from the restaurant industry. Then I would fund a special extra season of Kenny Powers in Africa. Story 107. Issue an executive order that all individuals involved in crimes hidden by bureaucracy are also held civilly liable, including everyone who concealed them. Just in case there are any, you know? I understand executive orders do not typically work that way, but do they? I mean, they are like king's decrees, despite the Constitution's specific guidance to the contrary. Story 108. Overturn every law made by the Trump administration, reopen agencies that served consumers, and hold Trump accountable. Story 109. Executive order to place the entire previous 2024 to 2025 administration in Alcatraz and permanently close all access to the facility and its surroundings. Story 110. I would resign and spend my life enjoying the $226,000 annual pension by having the Secret Service detail assigned to me run all over the place as I randomly drive around the country. Story 111. A president cannot be legally held accountable for certain actions because it is considered part of the job. The Supreme Court has been completely replaced by a bipartisan group of appointed judges. Certain individuals would not be sent to jails in other countries, which is an authority granted to me by the previous administration. I would exploit every loophole the previous president did and then eliminate those loopholes by making them illegal. Story 112. Arrest Donald Trump and order a 24-hour interrogation with no breaks. Follow every law exactly. The law states that while Trump can demand a lawyer, invoke the Fifth Amendment, and refuse to speak, that decision is his. Additionally, it is perfectly legal for police to lie during an interrogation. Trump's ego will not allow him to remain silent. He believes he is the smartest person in the room and will try to prove it. A police interrogation can continue as long as the officers want. Trump will become tired and start making mistakes. Even if he argues that his statements are inadmissible in court, he will still incriminate others. When he becomes scared and fatigued, he will incriminate himself and blame others. Story 113. Stop illegal immigration and deport anyone residing in the country unlawfully. Eliminate birthright citizenship. Legal immigration should remain unchanged as it is not a problem. Story 114. Force the elite Satan-worshipping billionaires to pay taxes like everyone else by imposing extremely high taxes on luxury items that regular people cannot even dream of. Personal jet, 8,000% tax. $500 million yacht, 10,000% tax. A $20 million painting, 6,000% tax. Story 115. Form a company to recycle landfills and appoint myself as the head effective tomorrow. Recall all our troops from everywhere. Make every document, file, and email public domain. Clock out and get ready to go to my first landfill. Gravity sorters are sorely underrepresented in this day and age. Story 116. In all honesty, without preparation time and a team of supporters such as senators and Congress members, what one can accomplish may be quite limited. Actions like releasing the Epstein list or files may seem simple. However, if your power lasts only one day, you might draft an executive order. But one challenge could send it to a court, and it might not be addressed for some time. Therefore, the list likely would not be released this way. Story 117. Epstein list. Make a few new laws. Any politician with a felony gets banned and jailed. If you serve the public, you need to be held to a standard and should understand the laws. Term limits. Story 118.1. Revise personal income taxes. The more you make, the more you pay. No deductions. It would be fair, and the percentage increases with gross income. 2. Replace all cabinet appointees to allow using Amendment 25 and commence voting on the same day. Story 119. I would go to Area 51 and see what is happening there. Then I would hold a press conference to inform people that I know what is going on, but that I am not going to tell anyone. Also, I would use the National Defense Production Act to seize Mar-a-Lago and turn it into a factory producing supplies for Ukraine, but not before President Obama and I leave practical jokes in all the toilets there and drink all the good alcohol. Story 120. Undo all of Felonious Fatty's edicts. Incarcerate the entire Twitter administration. Release the Epstein files in full, and sign legislation ensuring full civil rights for women and all minorities. Story 121. Term limits. Age restrictions. Every politician must be audited yearly to prevent corruption. Healthcare for all citizens. Excise taxes on all excessive corporate profits. Taxes on funds hidden offshore. Tax breaks for clean energy. Audit grocery middlemen. If farmers and stores are not making a profit, who is? Start building housing apartments, but have a police precinct in each project to reduce crime. Thanks a bunch for sticking around till the end of the video. Remember to subscribe, and until next time, stay awesome and goodbye.